Dan the Wheelman here, and my very special guest today is this. This is the 2024 Kia EV9. It is a fully electrified 3-row SUV. It's available with either dual motor all-wheel drive or with rear-wheel drive, so single motor rear-wheel drive, anywhere from 375 thereabouts kilometers of range all the way up to 489 kilometers of range. The base rear-wheel drive model makes 201 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. The GT line Ultimate you see here goes all the way up to 379 horsepower and 516, that's 516 pound-feet of torque. And of course, this is a dual motor. The GT line Ultimate is only available as a dual motor. There's about 5 trims altogether, varying in range and power and all that kind of stuff. But regardless of which EV9 you get, they're all going to look kind of like this, and that I think is great because this thing is super cool. Yeah, some people might say, like a cynic might say, it just looks like a grown or blown up Kia Soul, maybe, and that's okay because that's unique, and I want to see uniqueness. That's more fun than these garden variety SUVs that are all kind of the same shape and so on. You've seen those infographics online before of how each vehicle, if you remove the main details, kind of all look the same. That's too bad. This looks very unique and very different, but you might think it's kind of, because it's all big and blocky, that it's all kind of like, terrible wind resistance and all that kind of stuff, or bad drag, but no, not at all. This has a coefficient of drag of 0.28, and that's thanks to stuff like flush mounted door handles there that pop out when you clip the key fob or when you walk towards the vehicle. It's got these 21-inch wheels in GT line Ultimate form that are kind of made to be kind of more aerodynamic and low drag, and there's other wheel sizes as well. There's a 19 and a 20, and they're all kind of variations on the theme. They all have this kind of flat look to them. And then you got the whole flat front end here, which actually gets what's called the digital grille, where the grille lights up in different ways depending on how you set it. These very cool stacked headlamps here, and in GT line Ultimate form, there's some other bonuses. In addition to the bigger wheels, you get some more kind of like blacked out look to it. You've got the black roof rails, some other trim bits as well. So very cool looking vehicle, I think. Super unique, and I love that. Now let's see if that translates to the interior. Like that Soul I mentioned, or like some people might say this looks like a swole-up version of, it's very easy to get in and out of this vehicle, because guess what? That squared off styling makes for huge door openings. It's nice and low to the ground. I love that. Very, very low clutter in here. The dash is made up primarily of 3 displays. You've got a 12.3-inch display for your gauge cluster, a 5-inch display here, and a 12.3-inch for your infotainment as well. And actually there's 2 more displays if you want to count the digital rear view mirror and the heads-up display. These here are what's truly interesting though. In the middle, you've got your climate control kind of hotkeys right there. You can hit a button up here though, and that brings the climate controls across the whole display to make it a little bit easier to kind of handle them while you're on the road, so you don't have to spend so much time fiddling around. I like that. The gauge cluster changes style depending on which drive mode you're in, which is cool. And then you've got a kind of a touch panel under here as well for your map, media, all that kind of stuff. Down here I've got 2 USB-C ports. There's no USB-A ports here, which is too bad, but most things are USB-C these days anyway, including the latest iPhone, right? So there you have it. Got Meridian audio, very, very clear, very sharp. And of course down here I've got my seat controls, which you've got heated seats, cooled seats at 3 levels, massaging seat, heated steering wheel. That's all here. But even cooler than that are a couple of features. They use the massage feature for what's called a lumbar support engaged, or something along those lines. And what that means is basically, as you drive for a longer period of time, you can set the vehicle to automatically kind of pop the lumbar out to kind of give your lower back a bit of a kick to kind of make sure you're still focused. You can turn that off, of course, but it's kind of a neat thing they do. That's the first kind of, you know, Easter eggy, unique thing they have. Number two is the fact that by pressing a button on the side of the seat here, either up front or behind me here, you can put the seat almost fully reclined. Not fully reclined, but quite far back, and an extra thigh rise comes out as well when you hit that button. Now, what's the point of that? You say you can't drive like that, obviously. Well, no, you can, but you can also sit in the back seat. You can't drive from the back seat anyway. But say you've pulled up to start charging your vehicle, which, by the way, this could charge on a DC fast charger 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes thereabouts. Say you're sitting there charging, you want to have a rest. Well, simply hit those buttons, and there you go. Pretty cool. The GT line Ultimate has some bonuses like this synthetic leather here, and I talked about the Meridian audio, but all Kia EV9s get this neat storage bin right here, which you can adjust, either be a cup holder or a storage system, which is kind of cool. It's good they have it because this here is quite shallow, not a lot of room in there, but there's another storage bin down here, and of course you've got your glove box too, so that's all good. Plenty of room to store stuff up here. The steering wheel. Steering wheel has a lot going on. First of all, you've got these two paddles right here. These are not to shift gears, these are to change your regen from level 0 all the way up to level, I guess, 4 if you want to call that, which is I pedal, which is one pedal driving, essentially good for in the city when you want to gain some power back. So you hit those paddles to do that. I've also got a drive mode and a terrain mode on here. These buttons being on the wheel, I like that. I don't have to fiddle with a dial down here. It's just right on the wheel. That's good. And then, of course, the drive mode, you've got eco, normal, you've got sport. And not only does it change some of your driving parameters, it'll show you on display here how much range you get depending on which mode you're in. When you're in a higher sport mode, more power, all-wheel drive, all that kind of stuff, you're going to use more, kind of more of your range, so it'll lower the range. So you go to eco mode, your range starts coming back up. I like that. And of course, terrain mode, you've got snow, you've got mud, you've got sand, and all that stuff as well. I like almost everything going on in here. It's super spacious up front. We'll see how it is in the back in just a second. A couple of things though. Oh, also, of course, wireless charging, wireless Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto as well, so you want to keep that in mind. A couple of things that bug me. It's a bit monochromatic. Yes, it's got some kind of mood lighting in here, which is good, but still a bit monochromatic. A lot of dark gray and black plastic, especially down through here. A lot of plastic through there, which for what is here essentially an $80,000 vehicle, to have that much plastic there, I'm not so sure. Number two is the gear selector, or gear lever, whatever you want to call it. I still haven't quite got it. You twist forward for drive, pull back for reverse, but I find myself constantly going the wrong way with those. I'm not sure why I'm doing that, just the way it is. And you've got your EV on off button here too, which is kind of weird, especially since that's kind of hidden by your wheel spokes. Otherwise, don't love that. Park on the end makes sense, but otherwise it's there. I get why they do it. They're trying to declutter things, but I still haven't quite got used to it. We're seeing it here. We're seeing it on a bunch of other Kia Hyundai products as well. So that's the way it is. Other than that though, it's great up here. It's comfortable. The view out is great. It's roomy, and I think it's fantastic. And that bodes well for what's going on in the rest of the cabin. So let's get back there. And it is very roomy back here. Getting back here though is a little bit tougher than I'd like it to be. This is a power seat, so it takes a while for it to full forward and so on. It doesn't tumble or anything like that, so that's too bad. But once back here though, it's incredible. You have a USB-C port on either side. You've got cup holders, 2 of them on each side, a little bit of storage here, and lots of space, tons of headroom. I can't believe I can look upwards in the back seat, the 3rd row of this 3-row SUV, and not knock the bill of my cap against this very nice faux suede headliner here. Really, really good. The legroom is fine. This seat can go forward a little bit more if I wanted to. Legroom is fine. Comfort, it's incredible back here. I don't know how they've carved out so much space. Well, I do know this is an EV. You don't have all sorts of running gear jammed up into the cockpit, so you don't have to have such a high floor. So you've got a little more room, partly because of that. Otherwise, it's just really good design, really smart packaging. When you get a boxy shape like this, of course, it's going to help you get more out of your space as well. I think it's fantastic back here. Adults could be back here comfortably for extended periods. I know that 3-row SUVs don't fully replace minivans, but this is really close. This is really, really close. I think it's fantastic. I think it's absolutely fantastic back here. And then of course you got the second row captain chairs that have ratcheting armrests and stuff like that as well. They have their own cup holders and stuff there mounted to the back of the center console there, and all sorts of other good stuff, some storage bins and so on. Just really nice inside the EV9. They've just really nailed it when it comes to the interior packaging of the EV9. It's spacious, it's airy, good ergonomics, and just lots of room for stuff, storage and so on. And plus you've got the frunk on top of all that as well. So lots of room in and around this EV9. They've nailed it inside. Let's have a look at what it's like out on the road. As you first set off in the EV9, what you're immediately struck with is just how smooth it is. It is incredibly smooth. Bumps, speed bump, you name it, whatever else, railroad crossings, it's all swallowed up with gumption. I mean, the thing weighs 7,000 pounds, so that definitely helps, but there's no trick dampers here, nothing magnetic, nothing when it comes to adaptive, nothing like that, just basic dampers, but they're well tuned. And it's amazing what can happen when you tune dampers properly. It is so smooth. I love the way this thing drives. It drives like a proper luxury vehicle. But then again, there is the acceleration. We do have to talk about the speed, because with 516 pound-feet of torque, you're going to have some get up and go, especially if you activate sport mode, which I'm going to do right now. And you are flying. I don't care if this thing weighs more than 3 tons. There is so much speed here, and it's fantastic. I love it. Even once you're at speed, there's still some juice left to give you that little extra kick of acceleration you might need to pass on the highway or so on and so forth. But at low speeds, there's lots of great stuff happening as well, because there's so many turns lock to lock of the wheel, and with those squared off proportions, even though this thing is quite large, but the same size as the full size Telluride SUV, it's quite easy to maneuver in tight quarters, parking, parallel or perpendicular, weaving around buses, narrow city streets. That's all handled pretty well because of the great view out, squared off corners, and the well-tuned steering. And of course, when it comes to parking, you've got a great backup cam, high def, 360-degree view, all that kind of stuff. So first impressions here, top of the pops. Really nice, smooth, quiet. In fact, it's so quiet in here that I remember when I was on the launch of this program, we were driving this down in Arizona, and I was driving with my buddy Brian Chow, who's got the Everyday Reviews YouTube channel. You should check that out. He had his GoPro mounted to the sunroof here, and we were driving along, and everything was so quiet. We heard this little bit of drag. We're like, what is that noise? Why do we hear that? And we thought, could it be that? And so Brian, and as ballsy as it is of him, went up there, opened the sunroof while we were moving, mind you, managed to get his GoPro down without losing the thing on a freeway outside of Tucson, wherever we were, and right away it was quieter in here. It's so quiet, and I'm like, what is that? I'm like, the reason must be that it's so quiet in here otherwise, that when even the slightest discrepancy comes, because everything else is so serene, it just breaks that serenity just that little bit. And that's quite something. And not only the ride, but the handling too. Impressive. Very little body roll, all that weight, all that battery weight. This is a 98 kilowatt hour battery, I think, is stuffed down nice and low, so that lowers the center of gravity, which means less body roll through turns, and that's fantastic. But that would be nothing if it didn't steer properly, but it steers well as well, so you've just very little body movement through turns, but lots of control. This thing drives kind of like a car. I know that sounds kind of cliched and what have you, but it really keeps nice and flat. Again, even without trick dampers or sway bars, any of that kind of stuff, nothing active, still stays nice and flat through here because it's so well tuned. The last really big 3-row Kia I drove was the Telluride. It's around the same size as this one is. Not anywhere near as refined as this. The Telluride is not bad, but it's nowhere near as refined as this EV9 is, not by a long shot. Even with all that squared off styling and all that kind of stuff, it's still so quiet in here, which I think is fantastic. And you could tow with this as well. I'll put the tow rating on the screen here when I get it, but they do offer a tow package, so it is meant to be used as an everyday do everything SUV. Tons of space inside. You could tow. It's got power. It's got storage. You talked about the front. It's got a nice big trunk as well. Comfort, all that kind of stuff. This is meant to be used as an everyday EV, which is a tough nut to crack this day and age for EVs, even today. Yeah, so lots of great stuff. The spaciousness, the drive, the ride, all great. Then there's the pricing. Yes, it starts at around 60 grand for an entry-level rear-wheel drive model with less than 400 kilometers of range. And that's great, but still, you're running out of features at that point. To get this one I'm in, the GT line Ultimate, you're up towards 80 grand, and that's pricey. That's pricey. EVs are still very much the purview of the luxury car buyer, it seems. And even though this is applicable for federal EV rebates in Canada, as well as the various provincial EV rates that are out there. Quebec provincial EV rebate with the federal one, it's up around, I think, $12,000 or $14,000, something like that. That's a good amount of money, but still, you're still down to now, so you're down to 68 grand instead. Plus, you got to worry about freight and PDI and all that on top of that. So it's not cheap. It is expensive, and that's a tough one. It's going to be a tough one for people to swallow. But that being said, this is a very unique vehicle. There just aren't that many three-row EVs out there. You can make an argument for the Tesla Model X, but that third row is barely a third row. It's more like a jump seat. Yeah, you have stuff like the EQS Mercedes. That's expensive. Of course, the EQS SUV, that's very expensive. It's got a third row. The Rivian R1S has a third row. Sure, they all do, but you want to talk expensive, the Rivian's going to run you $125,000, the Mercedes EQ around the same thing. So, this has a bit of the market cornered for those that really want an EV, but they really want the practicality as well. It does cover a lot of bases if you're willing to pay the price, though. But that's just the way it is these days in the EV game. Thank you for tuning into this short review of the 2024 Kia EV9. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. If not, no hard feelings, of course. You can follow me on Twitter at Dan the Wheelman. Sorry, the app formerly known as Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. At Dan the Wheelman, or on Instagram at Dan the Wheelman as well. So thanks again for tuning into this video. Until next time, sayonara, folks.